swallowed by the state. And because they serve the state, they have a window for a bit of wealth. But a true Islamic organization will go hungry without the awqaf, hence the talk about the awqaf today. And so forth. People with narrow agendas and so on, states, businessmen, middle class that we rely on oftentimes for fundraising. It's a problem when the Islamic organization relies on the middle class public rather than leading the middle class public. Because then you are, as an Islamic organization, just playing the tunes of what the middle class likes. And the middle class is usually very hardworking, very busy. It's not about the cause of Islam for them. It's about protecting the kids from sexual deviances, and which is Islamic, but it's this like number one. I want to make sure the kids don't, have boys and girls things, and protecting the kids from drugs and whatever, and some issues that they do ritualistically, tahfidh or something of that sort. But the bigger objectives of Islam, the educational projects, the serious political projects, the projects of da'wah, da'wah organizations around the world have zero funding, and I can attest to that. I've been to Southeast Asia and America, and if you are into an organization with the da'wah in its name, you are literally begging in the streets. Because da'wah, nobody wants to fund da'wah anymore. The oil states funded da'wah at some point as some form of soft power. But now the equation changed in the Trump world, and no more soft power needed. They use soft power now, but with Islamophobes, not with da'wah organizations. So they don't fund da'wah anymore. Embassies don't fund da'wah anymore. I lived in the West, a number of countries, and we used to go to the embassy of any of the Muslim majority countries, and they bring us imams for Ramadan and this and that. That is very little now, because the funding has stopped from this. And therefore, the middle class doesn't understand that funding da'wah for the sake of Allah is important. In fact, you find scholars saying that, no, it is not your mission to convert people. We have this in the West quite a bit. We are not into the business of converting people. And there are Islamic organizations. What are in the business of if you're not converting people? Well, converting is a heavy word in the English language. Spreading awareness of your faith. You're not forcing anybody, obviously, and you're not giving people bread and they give you, the shahada or any of that. Of course, this is wrong. But you are spreading awareness of Islam. You're calling for Islam. You see, no, we're not in the business of calling for Islam. And they do that under the usually pressure of governments that twist their arms with the charity status. Because if you are in Western legislations, you are, as a charity, you can give tax receipts, and you can, and that's where the middle class comes here. The middle class calculates that instead of paying $20,000 in taxes, let me give them a charity, and then I lose, instead of 20,000, I lose 15 or maybe 13, and the rest comes back in terms of charity and so forth. So that's how the middle class, donates. I'm involved in a mosque in Ottawa, and one of the imams, a visitor in fact, not even the imam, and originally from South Africa, he mentioned something about Zionism and so on. And then the government of Canada, I see how nice Canada is, that is the government did. Actually, they took away the charity status of the mosque. And the next month, the mosque cannot even pay the electricity bill. Because once you take the charity status, the middle class average Canadian Muslim is afraid to give the mosque money. Like, why did they take charity status? Well, because it criticizes Islam. Well, no, let's not do that. And so forth. So basically, without the awqaf, it is not possible for Islamic knowledge to be free. And for an imam to sit and, within, of course, in Canada, within the framework of the law. Nobody's going to break the law or call for terrorism or any of that. But within the framework of the law, you have to be able to be academically free, to speak in the modern sense. And you're not academically free if you are in need of funding that is not guaranteed by the awqaf. And that is when major Islamic organizations, historical institutions like Al-Azhar or Qarawiyyin or any of that, Zaytuna, when they are off their awqaf and they are acquired by the state, they are not free. They are not academically sovereign. And you read in history books of Al-Azhar, let's say, that Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah Draz, rahimahullah, when the Egyptian general Abdel Nasser asked him to be a Sheikh of Al-Azhar, he had one condition, which is for Al-Azhar to have back its awqaf, so that he is free. He is not a minister, he is a Sheikh. But of course, Nasser didn't, of course not. Why? Because if you have a budget in your hand as a government, and not the awqaf, then you can play the carrot and stick with Islamic academics and Islamic ulama especially. Ulama are very powerful, especially if you're talking about the history of Al-Azhar. It is Al-Azhar really that fought against the French and the English and everybody who attacked Egypt from the time of the first attack of Louis the Ninth. From that time, it was Al-Azhar scholars who led the resistance. But Al-Azhar scholars, when they become officers in the state, it's a different story. They are just officers. They go home 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 or whatever. They go home and that's it. So here it's important to take care of awqaf. I answered the question, and you have the paper in the notes you have, that has to do with using zakat funds for awqaf. And this is not the opinion that is the usual opinion of our ustads and our scholars. I know that my sheikh and ustad, Sheikh Yusuf Qardawi, has a different view from that. Nevertheless, I proposed this in the European Council for Fatwa Research. Some scholars agreed with me, some scholars disagreed. The European Council for Fatwa Research did not issue a fatwa based on this paper. It's just publishing the paper, but did not agree that you can take from the zakah wealth or the zakah money for the awqaf. I believe in this, and you have details in the paper. I think it's in Arabic and English. If you miss any of the two languages, let me know. But basically, I'm arguing in that paper is that let's apply the framework that we have on a fatwa issue. Question number one, what are the Quran and Sunnah related to awqaf? In the Quran, there is nothing particular on that except fi sabilillah. And the Sunnah, the word tasbih, which is a verb from fi sabilillah, is what the Prophet ﷺ used in Hadith Umar. And therefore, anything that says fi sabilillah in the Quran has to do with the awqaf, al-infaq, spending, in the way of Allah, etc. Now, the hadith of Umar, there is hadith of Uthman ibn Affan and the well in Medina, in Roma, and the hadith of Khalid when he did the awqaf of his armor and his horses and so forth. And the hadith of, I think Ibn Mas'ud, in which he said that every companion had awqaf. So the word awqaf here is not a prophetic word. This is not a prophetic concept, but it is an Islamic concept that developed after the Prophet illa waqaf. But the prophetic terms were al-tasbih, or make something fi sabilillah, or al-habs. Al-habs is to imprison something or to lock something. Lock it for the sake of Allah. Now, based on these Quran and Sunnah, we come up with the objectives of the awqaf, maqasid al-awqaf. What are they? I mentioned some of them, which is to free the waqif himself, the donor, to free the donor from any influence except the donor's goodwill, and to free the receivers of the awqaf. The receivers of the awqaf funds are not working for the donor, and they are not working for the state. They are working for the waqf. If they are doing tahfidh, or they are teachers, or they are strangers, or people in debt, or somebody or somebody who's homeless or lost or in a family conflict or any of that, these people are not working for anybody. They are working for the waqf itself, because this is fi sabilillah. Now, there are a number of objectives of the Awqaf. There are a number of concepts, the concept of Waqf itself, the concept of shart, or the conditions, shurut al-Waqf, the conditions of that Waqf. A number of fi'at or groups, who is the Waqif and who is the Mawquf alayh and who is this, and the sunan related to that has to do with at-tadawul, let's say the circulation of wealth, and has to do with the tadafu' or the mutual struggle between forces in a society. I see that there's not enough funding for sick people, for example, so I do a waqf for the sick people, then I am pushing behind, I'm pushing back something that has to do with that. So basically, how the society is having its mutual dynamics based on that. These are the sunnah, and the values of mercy, and the values of giving and generosity and so forth, and the commands and so forth. Now, if we draw this mind map based on the methodology, we will see that the Awqaf is an open arena for rethinking, for ijtihad, because there's so much fiqh that we inherited from all the schools, but this fiqh is a matter of ijtihad, not really a matter of nas, not a matter of something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said or the Prophet said. So those who do not allow waqf to be, cash, you cannot just give $1,000 to a waqf. Most scholars do not allow it. Most scholars do not allow the zakat to be mixed with alcohol. Most scholars do not allow certain things. But this is all ijtihad. And there could be a different ijtihad in the contemporary times. It's very important as well for the Awqaf to look at some other concepts and objectives. And one of them is the concept of state today versus the concept of civil society. These are contemporary concepts. It